Celebrities, the subsection of humanity which people really like to put on a pedestal. But regardless of how you view them, in the end, they are still human. And as humans, they are prone to conflict. And one of the ways conflict manifests itself in the music industry is diss tracks. Today, we're going to be talking about what some may consider a war between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Now, normally, I do not pay attention to the going-ons of celebrities. I just don't really care. They're people, so what? However, it was brought to my attention by a friend, this ongoing conflict, and he suggested it might be an interesting video. So I took myself over to Google and took a look, and I would have to agree, things did get quite interesting, so I'm doing a video on it. Now, for those who may not be familiar, Drake is a very influential rapper in the current era of music, and Kendrick Lamar is another such figure within the music industry. Now, like I've already said, I had no knowledge of what was going on with this conflict. So I went to my best friend for information, Wikipedia, to which I found an entire page dedicated to this conflict. And funnily enough, it's formatted almost identically to how pages on actual wars are formatted, listing different people involved like they are opposing parties in an armed conflict. But that is not the point. When I was viewing this page, I noticed how it gives the background for this conflict starting over a decade ago. It seemed a bit absurd, however, it makes sense because this conflict is rooted in their entire relationship. That relationship seemed to have been fairly positive, at least in the beginning, starting back in about 2011. But in August 14th, 2013, we see the first real notable instance in this back and forth between the two parties. In Big Sean's Control, Kendrick Lamar says he has love for a bunch of other rappers on the scene, which includes Drake, but he's going to murder them in like a professional, competitive manner. Now, it seemed like Drake really didn't take this to heart based on what he was saying initially. How he went and talked to Lamar and was like, oh, nothing's changed, he's still chill, everything's good. However, in September, Drake releases his third album, Nothing Was the Same. And in the first verse of the song, The Language, he says, effectively, I'm going to paraphrase because his songs are, well, they would get me demonetized very quickly. If you're saying things to just get a reaction, screw you, is effectively what he was saying. Which many people were taking and inferring this is talking about what Lamar said just the previous month. While the head of Drake's record label at the time said that wasn't about Lamar, yeah, it kinda seems like it was about him. Especially doesn't help how in October, we find Lamar rapping about how nothing's been the same since they dropped Control and tucked a sensitive rapper back in his pajama clothes. This was in the Hip Hop Awards. While it's not directly aimed at Drake, the timeline's starting to fit. We see Lamar initially just kind of saying some things, sounding to me initially like friendly rivalry. And then Drake comes along and he says he has no qualms with what was said, and then he releases a song that contradicts it. And so we see Lamar respond in turn, and it starts the back and forth. However, surprisingly, not much really happens. During this period, there's a bit more tit for tat. You got some quick jabs placed between both parties, but there's nothing especially dirty, nothing really making a splash. And that lasts until March 22nd of 2024, where we find Lamar responding to J. Cole, who in October of the year prior had suggested how himself, Drake, and Lamar are the big three top dog rappers in the modern hip-hop genre. And Lamar's response to this is effectively, nah fam, it's just me. And unsurprisingly, J. Cole did not take kindly to his statement. And in response, he released a song called 7 Minute Drill, which criticizes one of Lamar's albums from 2015, called To Pimp a Butterfly. Now, interestingly here, he decides to publicly apologize on stage a few days later and pull the song from all streaming services. Now, of course, the internet being the internet, it ain't gone. You could still find the song perfectly fine, but he's not getting anything from it anymore. Now, unlike J. Cole, Drake, to this situation, took the haughty route and basically said, I'm too far above this. None of this touches me. However, very quickly, we find out that's a lie. On April 13th, early versions of Drake's Push-Ups song was released, clearly showing, yes, his words do affect you. He also decides to take a very low blow at Lamar's height, of all things. The guy is 5'5", which if the only thing you can say about a person is their outward appearance, perhaps don't say anything at all. But after this, he fully releases the song on the 19th, along with another song titled Tailor-Made Freestyle. The problematic thing with this is it features AI-generated vocals of Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur. Now, I don't know if he got Snoop Dogg's permission to use his voice. However, I am fairly sure he did not receive Tupac's permission, unless, mayhaps, he took out the Ouija board. You never know. Now, unsurprisingly, the Shakur estate took issue with his voice being used. They cited it as a violation of Shakur's personality rights. Now, the high and mighty Drake, who cannot be screwed with by anyone on this earth, ended up taking down the song on the 26th. You know, just like someone who can't be messed with would do. Now, fast forwarding a little bit to the 30th, we find Lamar releasing a diss track named Euphoria, which is specifically targeting Drake's TV show that he's the executive producer of, also titled Euphoria. Within this track, Lamar does a few things, but he criticizes Drake's abs, saying they're fake, and of course the show itself, but I find it funny that Lamar decided to take a jab at Drake's appearance after Drake took a jab at his, but not even letting Drake have a moment to breathe. On the 3rd of May, Lamar releases an Instagram reel titled 616 in LA with another diss track. This one mainly parodying how Drake has released multiple songs with the format of time in city, like 8 a.m. in Charlotte. But this is where things start getting dirty. On May the 3rd, Drake releases Family Matters in response to Lamar's previous disses. In this, Drake alleges 3 things. One of Lamar's children is actually the child of one of Lamar's closest friends. Lamar is a domestic abuser, and he is unfaithful with his fiancée. How he would know any of this is beyond me. With this, he hath opened Pandora's box and escalated the conflict. And Lamar, rightfully so, responds. Not even a day later, not even an hour later, 20 minutes later, Lamar releases a diss track titled Meet the Grams, where he is speaking to members of Drake's family. He tells Drake's son Adonis, I'm sorry that your father is Drake. And Lamar alleges Drake has a child that he's hiding, and that he's a child diddler, and that he has a sex trafficking ring. In the span of a day, this tit-for-tat conflict had the heat dialed to a 19. It was fairly inconsequential before. They're taking jabs at each other, and it was getting mean-spirited. However, now both sides just pulled out the big guns. They are getting real dirty. This ain't pretty anymore. And while both sides are alleged without any evidence, it wouldn't be the first time someone very high-ranking in society, and even the music industry for that matter, was outed for diddling kids. And this is something I never have been able to understand. What is with people when they're getting to really high places of power, using that power to create sex trafficking rings designed around trafficking children? Why? Go after grown adults. Go after people who are properly developed. Yeah, it's still scummy then. You're still trafficking humans, but they're not children. You're not going to be a child diddler. You're just going to be a criminal. If you're going to be a criminal, don't be a kid diddler. But back to the topic at hand. On the 4th of May, Kendrick Lamar releases Not Like Us, where he very explicitly refers to Drake and his close fellows as kid diddlers. He says, and I quote, "Say, Drake, I hear you like 'em young. You better not ever go back to cell block 1, end quote. In the song, he also refers to how a member of Drake's security team was arrested and charged with sex trafficking, assault, and robbery of a 22-year-old woman back in 2014. While the sex trafficking charge didn't stick, that is what we in the business call sus. But additionally, Lamar talks about how Drake used the AI Tupac voice, saying, yeah, you just killed your reputation in the Bay Area, which is likely. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people. But moving on from that, we see the very next day, on the 5th of May, Drake releases The Heart Part 6, which is referencing Lamar's The Heart series, where the last one that Lamar had released was The Heart Part 5. In here, Drake, of course, denies the allegations of kid diddling, as any sane person would do. However, I debate his sanity. But he was also doubling down on the whole domestic abuse angle that he was throwing at Lamar. He claims there were cases of domestic violence between Lamar and his son, and how he had not even seen his own children in 6 months. But this is likely, once more, baseless claims. However, what is not baseless is Drake's friendship with the actress Millie Bobby Brown, which supposedly started when she was 14. One does not just make friends with a 14-year-old girl when you are not also a teenager. We would call that really sus. It doesn't help your case for saying you're not a kid diddler. Your actions are saying otherwise. Now, at the time of me recording this, that is the end of their exchange. However, I do expect it to get larger. The flames are roaring, and they aren't going out anytime soon. And speaking of flames, there was a news article that I heard about, which mentioned how on the 7th, there was a drive-by shooting outside of Drake's house in which a security guard was injured. Now, there is no connection directly to what's going on with their feud. However, the timing is awfully coincidental, wouldn't you say? I would imagine there would have to be some connection somewhere, somehow. But that's just speculative. And aside from speculation, there really isn't much that can be done about what both Drake and Lamar have said at the moment. Until one side comes out with concrete evidence about the other, their words shall just remain alleged. But regardless of that, as things stand, Drake doesn't look so hot, and Lamar's looking pretty fine with regards to this conflict. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you disliked the video, leave a dislike. On your way out, you'll see that funny little subscribe button. So why don't you come up with some diss tracks for it? Hit it with some really hard lines. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. If it's not, have a wonderful day. Bye.